So we're going to, well, you may not need any props at all for this. I've got here a bolster and a blanket and a block in case, just to show you variations. But there's nothing that is for which a prop is absolutely essential. And quite often in a yin practice, especially some of the classes I've taught recently, we'd hold a pose for maybe 5 minutes, quite long holds for a reasonably short amount of poses. That's the wrong way of putting it. I've just had a really deep sleep, so I have to kind of get my brain working again. So I fell asleep on the sofa. What I meant to say was not very many poses, quite long holds. And today we've got a few more poses and quite short holds because we're going to try to go through a whole body flow. So I hope that's okay for you. As always, never do anything that causes you any pain at all. Like I say, I'll give you variations sometimes to help you. And so the first variation may be that sitting back on your heels like this for a few minutes isn't comfortable. So if it isn't comfortable, come to a seated position of your choice. Otherwise, this is called Seiza, and it's actually quite nice if you can stay in it, because it begins to open out the front of your ankles and your feet. Nice little bit of pressure on your legs. And coming to this pose, a variation could be that you sit on a block. And closing your eyes when you're ready. Closing your eyes when you're ready. And using the first few moments of your practice to drop into the body, to settle into the breath. This gives you time to have a little bit of a weather check, simply observing how you're feeling at the end of this week. Noticing the atmosphere in the room. And allowing your attention to fall to your belly. You could even take your hands across your belly. Feeling the gentle rise and fall of your belly underneath your hands, shoulders soft. And if you would like to, if it interests you, it's not essential, you could come into a breathing practice where you begin to count the same count for the breath in and the breath out. So you might like to breathe in for 3, pause and breathe out for 3, or choose a number of your choice. Keep dropping your attention into the lower belly. And as you sit for a minute or so longer, simply following this breath, the count or not, noticing if you're able to soften around the shoulders, if you're able to soften behind your eyes, the roof of your mouth. The inside of your cheeks. maybe noticing if for you there's any intention you'd like to set for this practice. All this week I've been asking everyone in my classes to simply ask yourselves, why are you here? What's brought you to the mat now on a Friday evening instead of something else? And it's possible that your answer to that question is a guide to an intention for your practice. And then when you're ready, opening your eyes, and we're going to come to our first pose, which is a toe stretch. So I said we're going to work on the whole body. So if you'd like to come onto your knees and spread your toes as much as you can with your fingers, and then come to sit back on your toes. Sometimes it's useful to do this so that you can really lift your knees so you can spread all your toes. And then drop the knees and come to sitting on the heels. And I know that for some people this is just a gorgeous thing to do for the plantar fascia, the tissues in the bottom of the feet. But for a lot of people it's quite excruciating. So if it becomes unbearable, because we're going to stay for about 2 minutes, if it becomes unbearable, you just take your weight forwards. Then we can lift the arms here and open and clench the fists. This isn't necessary. You might like to do this to improve circulation in the hands and the wrists as you remain with the richness of sensations in your feet. Breathing all the time. So we've been here for 1 minute. We're going to do another minute. And this is an example of a pose where things can get a bit sticky, a bit tricky. So what are you going to do? Are you going to decide it's just too much and you come right out? Or are you going to notice that discomfort is present, but that you can breathe and you can be with it? You can accept this discomfort by going right into the heart of it. We've got 30 more seconds. You could bring your hands down if you want. And I'm feeling this with you. I can assure you, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's so good for our feet. So good for the tissue behind our toes. And then taking one more breath in here. And as you breathe out, take your weight forwards into your hands. Release your toes. Don't immediately start tapping them on the floor. It's quite interesting to simply feel the sensations now flooding your ankles, your feet, your toes. And if you want to, have a little tap, and then slide back to a brief child's pose, just for a minute. Take your hands underneath your head, or take your arms out in front of you. And at any time in this practice, if it's something that you like to do, you could come back to that equal breath count. I'll try and remember to remind you. It's just very interesting sometimes to focus the mind on the breath. And for the last few seconds in this child's pose, just inviting as much softness into the body as possible, noticing where you're holding, where it's possible to release a little bit more. And then pushing into your hands to straighten your arms and sliding your hands towards you. And we come to a minute or so for the opposite stretch, for an ankle stretch. So you take your hands behind you, and this is where it will depend on you. You try and lift your knees. For some people, lifting a tiny bit is already intense. For some people, even just sitting on the feet is intense. Some people might be able to come back onto the forearms. Too many props behind me. Lifting the knees quite high. And this is wonderful, wonderful nourishment for all the tissues that are on the top of the feet, around the ankles. Come to your breath. Come to your breath. Stay very, very close. I know it's intense. Sometimes when we have intense emotions, intense sensations, we run away. And Yin is an invitation to inquire a little bit into our reactions, as long as there's no acute pain. There's a difference that we learn to decipher between acute pain and discomfort. A lot of teachers use a traffic light system, where orange and green are okay, but if things become red and very sharp and pricking, it means it's just not really a good idea to stay there. Coming to about 15 more seconds here, if you're still with me. One more breath in, and then gently releasing yourself out of that pose. Take a moment. Let's not be in a hurry to rush from pose to pose. It's a lot of attention on the ankles and the feet. We can bring ourselves onto all fours now and take one leg at a time behind, pushing through the heel. Just for a few breaths. Let's say 5 breaths on each side. Lovely to see you all tonight. Crazy weather, at least around Lancaster. I don't know where you all are. I know Paul is literally opposite me. Hi Paul, hope you got your bread okay. And then taking the other leg out behind you, pushing through the heels, breathing. Wonderful, wonderful. And then we'll take a few breaths in cat-cow and coming into downward dog, just to bring a little bit of mobility into the spine. So as you breathe in, tilting the pelvis forwards, taking your belly towards the floor, opening the chest. And as you breathe out, scoop up, tailbone down. And it may be that you are very happy moving like this between cat and cow. Or it may be that you like to come up to a downward dog as well. So I'll leave you to play in between the cat, the cow and the dog for a few breaths, feeling into the back of your legs, allowing the spine to find its range of mobility. Breathing, maybe counting the breath. Being completely present. One more breath in, and then breathe out. We all meet on all fours again. And now we give our wrists a little bit of attention. So some of you may just want to take your fingers out to the side. Some of you may be able to turn your hands in towards the body a bit more. So you're turning your hands outwards and in. And again, I'm putting the timer on for 2 minutes. And if we're doing a lot of downward dogs in our hatha or flow classes, it's just really, really great to bring a little bit of nourishment into the wrist tissues. Obviously, if you have anything like carpal tunnel syndrome or another wrist issue, you wouldn't do this. But if you're comfortable, begin to take your bottom back a little bit towards your heels and see how that increases sensation up the lower arms. And breathe. Breathe, softening a little in the lower ribs. And can you feel that? Can you feel the aliveness in your hands, your lower arms and your wrists? Got one more minute. Stay close to the breath, close to sensation. There's nothing like a yin practice to bring you bang right into the present moment. As you live with, you explore into sensation. 30 more seconds. And then taking one more breath in and a long breath out. And very lovingly, very gently releasing your hands. And without really moving your hands very much, bringing them back to simply feel. Simply feel the wrists, the palms, the fingers. And then if you want to, you could have a little bit of a rub. So I think a few weeks ago, I mentioned how a lot of teachers after intense poses say, now come out and shake it all about. And I had a teacher more recently who suggested it's much more interesting and useful for the body to watch the residue, watch the aftermath of a pose. So you can then feel the recirculation of energy in the body rather than kind of shaking it all up. We're going to come straight into a heart melting pose, which is why I've got the bolster here. Like I said, you don't need one. This is going to be a 3-minute heart melting pose. What's important for this pose is that you have your hips over your knees. You might want to cushion your knees. And let me show you with the bolster first. With the bolster, you're taking your lower ribs and the center of your chest onto the bolster. So it takes the pressure off the pose. And then you can simply release your head. And this is a restorative heart melting pose. So you still get a softening at the back of the ribs. The yin version would be to simply melt the heart down, maybe holding onto the end of your mat or taking your arms apart. You can also simply, if you've got any pain in the shoulder, simply bring your hands underneath your head. And then we settle into this pose. Some of you will be on your forehead, some of you on your chin, some of you will be very open in the mid-back and can melt the chest all the way to the floor. And breathe. Come to the breath as you settle in and allow yourself to explore where this pose is happening for you. Coming towards the end of your first minute, and then it's really lovely if you can simply drop behind the thoughts, drop behind the turbulence to a little bit of inner stillness maybe. I've actually come to the side of my head, and that's really nice if anyone wants to try that. Can you soften in the face? Can you really feel the whole of your heart space, front, back and sides, melting towards the earth, prostration. You We've got about 1 minute left. You can always return to that counting breath if that works for you. Breathe. Coming to your final 30 seconds. Breathe. And taking a full breath in and a long breath out. To come out of the pose, you need to engage your abdominal muscles just a little bit to give you a little bit of support for your back as you edge your way back, first of all, into rabbit. Forearms on the mat, sitting back towards your heels, nice and long at the back of the neck. And taking a few slightly deeper breaths, you can really feel the back of the ribs, the back of the heart space. Now we are going to take 2 minutes in child's pose. So either take a restorative child's pose with a bolster in between your legs, not actually sitting on it, but just drawing it in and lying down, or taking this pose without the bolster. It's a lovely counter pose to that back bend that went into the thoracic spine. Allows the shoulders, the cheeks to soften. So just let's stay quiet here and soften completely. Maybe still breathing in and out for the same amount of time. And observing where you could become softer, where you could release some of the tension of your week. If it's there, it might not be. Breathe. If your head is on the bolster in one direction, take the face the other way. For your second minute. Breathe. So good to rest, isn't it? And very, very gently pushing into your hands to very slowly bring yourself up. Removing the bolster if you might want it for the next pose, having it handy. And we're coming down onto our bellies into Sphinx, which will then turn into seal pose. So for some people, having the elbows underneath the armpits is already quite intense for the lower back, for the lumbar spine. If that's the case, take your elbows out to the side. For some people, this might not feel like anything at all, in which case you could raise your forearms up. I'm going to stay here for 2 minutes and I'll give you an option to change the pose a little. And I like to visualize And through the visualization, feel my spine come into a hammock type formation. See if that description helps you drop into the spine and open the chest. If you're very, very bony in the front of your pelvis, you could have a blanket rolled up under there. I don't have that problem. And breathe. Some people in this pose, if they feel a little bit vulnerable in the lower back, might find it helpful to try clenching the buttocks a little bit, or even dragging the tailbone towards the heels. It's a micro movement, Caroline, to create a little bit more space in the lower back, but only if it's giving you any jip. Come to the breath, maybe the equal breath. How soft again can you become inside your mouth, the skin of your face. Stay close. You have a choice. You could stay where you are, you could come down a notch, or I'm going to move into seal, which is where you take your hands a little bit wider apart, fingers pointing out, and it's a more intense back bend, which definitely isn't for everybody. And some people like to take a bolster under, and I should have shown you that. If you're finding all of this quite difficult, you could take a bolster underneath your hips and have a supported seal. That's really nice. It's not a yin pose that way, it's a restorative pose, as we're not stressing the tissues if we use the bolster in that way. Come to your breath. So what we're doing here is compressing the lower spine. We're compressing all of the tissues around the lower vertebrae, which apparently is very, very good for long-term back health. And in terms of an understanding from traditional Chinese medicine, which has had such a strong influence on this form of yoga, this is an area in the body where we condense chi, or prana, or energy. And through condensing it, through concentrating it in this way, when we come out, it's almost like we experience I can't think of the right word, but it feels to me as if I'm being washed through with fresh energy, as the energy from that part of the body reintegrates, redistributes itself around the body. See what you feel like. We've got another minute. Never ever tolerate sharp red pain. Final 20 seconds. And taking a full breath in, everybody. And as you breathe out, settling yourself down on your belly. So if you're using any kind of prop, taking it away now, so you can simply take your forehead on your hands And you use the breath into the belly against the floor as your counter pose. And this is when it's interesting to observe sensation, what you feel emanating from your lower back around the body. A few more breaths, breathing into your lower belly, releasing the lower back. And then if you'd like to bring your hands by your ribs, so you can bring yourself to all fours. The next sequence is focusing on the hips. You might like to cushion the knees. There's going to quite often be one knee on the floor. Start by bringing your right foot forwards for dragon flying low. So this is where the front knee is over the ankle, or it can go past the ankle a little bit, ahead of it, but not behind it, because that will strain the knee. Slide the back knee as far back as feels right for you. And we stay in dragon flying low for 3 minutes. And here the options are to stay exactly like this, hands on the floor, to lift your hands onto bricks or books if you can't reach the floor. Or some of you might like to come down really low inside the front foot onto your forearms, which is more of a gecko. Or you could do a mixture of all of those things. And each yin pose is targeting a particular muscle group. And now you'll feel it, we're really working into the left hip flexor, all around the front of the pelvis on the left, and on the right you'll feel it in the hip and the buttock and in the groins, all of these tissues and muscles around the pelvis. That said, you might well be compensating by gripping into your upper body, so how about softening a little and use your exhalations to release. Breathe. This is great for sciatica, incidentally. If anyone knows anyone, or if any of you suffer from sciatica, this is a really useful pose to stay in for a few minutes. And it generates heat. Can you feel that heat? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Stay close to the breath. And when it gets intense, all of you have been coming to these classes now for weeks. When it gets intense, rather than be frightened of that intensity, can you accept it and have a little look right through the middle of it? See what's on the other side. You're coming to your final 30 seconds in this dragon flying low. And taking one full breath in and a long breath out. And then very carefully be tender with yourself. Straighten back, pull the left hip back so that the hip is above the knee. And then slide the right heel away. So you can see the thigh is perpendicular, this right leg is straight. You pull the right toes towards you. And then you come down over that leg as far as feels right for you. Now this is only 1 minute, and we're obviously targeting the hamstrings and all the tissues around the back of the legs. Stay close. I know for some people Hello, Liz. For some people, maybe this is intense. For those people who find hamstrings a challenge, although it is different every day. We've got 30 more seconds. Breathe. Try pulling the little toe edge of the foot towards you rather than the big toe to see how that changes where the sensation is distributed. One more breath in and a long breath out. And very gently bending forwards enough so that you can bring that right knee back. And we'll go straight into the other side and then we'll take a counter pose for both sides. Bring the left foot forwards, knee above the ankle. Slide the right knee away as far as feels agreeable. And remember, you could have hands up on bricks. You could have both hands inside the front foot. You could come down on your forearms. Or you could settle into the simple version. In terms of restorative, and I totally forgot on the other side, it's quite interesting to take the bolster right under the top of the back thigh. It's actually really pleasant to do that. If you're finding this just too intense and you want to take off some of the pressure, try that. It's better with one of the thicker bolsters or cushions. And come to your breath and examine where you're holding the tightness, and it might well not be in the lower body, it might be up here around the upper body. It's where we hold the strain. And drop right into it, drop right into the heart of it, and notice how you release millimeter by millimeter here. So good. Breathe. Breathe and soften wherever you find constriction, restriction. You're coming into the final minute of the pose now. Final minute of the pose. Can you drop another layer? Can you dive a little deeper? Final 30 seconds. And taking a full breath in and a long breath out. And when you're ready, beginning to draw that left hip back to straighten the leg, but then push the heel away so that your right thigh is vertical and your left leg is extended. And remember, for 1 minute, you're encouraging the little toe edge of the foot to draw up towards the hip. And you don't have to come down low, just coming down as far as works for you. And breathe here. Keep drawing the left hip back and away, so you create space in the pelvis as well as really feeling into the back of that leg. So good. So there isn't really a restorative version. We're going right. This is just yin, yin, yin right now. And taking one more full inhalation and then a long exhalation. From here again, gently coming forwards, just enough so that you can then draw the left knee back. Take a moment here. Take a moment here being aware of sensations in the hips, the buttocks, the groin. Then you can take a few little circles with the hips, very soothing. A few little circles in one direction, and then take those circles in the opposite direction. And then we'll come into a downward dog if it's pleasant for you. Not for long, just for a few breaths as a counter pose. Really drawing those sitting bones apart. So you create a sense of your buttocks moving apart. This is to create space in the pelvis. And take 5 full breaths here, completely alive and present in the body. Every time your mind wanders, bring it back to the breath and to that question of why are you here? What's brought you here tonight? One more full breath in. And as you breathe out, drop your knees. And we continue with the theme of the hips by coming into pigeon on the right. So if you know that I'm just going to show the alternative first. If you know that you have pain in the knee when you come into pigeon, come onto your back, take the right ankle over the left knee and draw your legs in like this. That is the same, targeting this part of the body. Otherwise, taking your right knee just outside the right hand and taking your shin as far up the mat as works for you without hurting the knee. Look over your left shoulder, see that the left leg is nice and straight. And we're going to take a few variations here. We're going to first of all come down to sleep. Well, some people call it sleeping swan, for 2 minutes. And one thing I would say here is if you are, demonstrate here, if you're keeling over like that, it's really helpful to place a little something, a cushion or a block, just under the right thigh or the right buttock, because we're looking to have a nice balanced pelvis if possible. Come down to sleep. And breathe. 2 minutes only here. It's quite interesting to flex the toes of the right foot. This engages and protects the muscles around the knee, if that's an issue for you, if you feel vulnerable. You could also have a bolster underneath your belly, your chest, if you want to rest the upper body like that. Breathe. Staying with the richness of sensation in this pose. As long as there's no pain in the knee, that's vital. Don't compromise your knees ever, 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 she says from experience. And then from sleeping pigeon, we come up, straightening. If you're on your back, simply stay where you are. If you're on your front, straightening your arms up. And we take just 1 minute here, maybe even taking the head back a little bit. And dropping in the front of the pelvis, opening the belly and the chest. Breathe here. Breathe here. Coming into the final 20 seconds. Isn't pigeon just such a lovely pose? Some of us will think so, some of us might not. Used to hate it so much. And taking a full breath in and a long breath out. If you're on your back, please come to sitting. If you're in pigeon like me on the front, keeling over into the right buttock so that you can bring the left leg over for shoelace pose. So the full shoelace, which we'll hold for 2 minutes, would have both knees stacked like this. If you find that you're all over the place, it's just not going to happen. Take half shoelace with the right leg extended. If you're almost there, but it just doesn't feel quite right, place a cushion or a blanket in the space between the knees so that you can release down. And then we're going to take a pose for the upper body here as well. So first of all, just feel yourself rooting down through the sitting bones in the hips. And then take the arms out. Inhale. And as you exhale, take the right arm over the left for eagle arms. So we did this in the Hatha Flow class this morning, but here we stay for 2 minutes. Would help if I put the timer on. And if you're not able to wrap your forearms and hands around, straighten out the right arm and use the left elbow to draw the arm across the body so you get nice, rich sensation here in the top of the arm and shoulder. And then you might like to lift your shoulders up towards the ears and then slide them down, elbows and hands up and away from the face. And now come to your breath. Come to your breath. Releasing the shoulders, releasing any tension in the face and the throat. By far one of my most favourite poses. Breathe for 1 more minute. And gets into so many little areas of tension, this pose. So good, so rich. 30 more seconds. And then taking a full breath in, and on your breath out, releasing your arms. Keeping your legs in shoelace arms. We're going to take a side stretch here in shoelace. We're going to come over to the right. So take your right hand out beside you. Simply lift the left arm over by the ear. And it may be that you rest your forearm on the floor or maybe on a brick. You don't want to be rolling right over, so you lift the left hip. You want to be grounded and at the same time feel this enrichment, this nourishment along the left side of the body. Well, it's really nice just to look down here to take any pressure off the neck. 2 minutes here. You've already been 30 seconds. Lovely pose as well. Breathe. Breathe and soften. All those little knots that you might encounter on the way. Don't tighten them, but soften them with a little bit of love. This practice is for you to unravel as you come to your evening and your weekend. all unravelled, undone and fresh. Coming to your final 30 seconds here. So good. And taking a full inhalation and a long exhalation. And you can lower that left hand to the knee and gently push yourself up through the right hand. And again, without rushing to the other side for that sequence, taking a breath here. Feeling the body. Noticing your inner landscape. And we will now take all of those poses on the left. So if you need to take pigeon on the back, you take your left ankle over the right knee, pull your legs in towards you. If you're on your front, your left knee comes forwards. Taking the left foot as far up the mat as is right for you without any pain in the knee. Make sure your right leg is straight. Remembering you could take a bolster under your belly or your chest. And we settle down for 2 minutes, sleeping pigeon first. And how do you feel on this side? Is it tighter? Or is it easier? Maybe it's the same. Remember, if you're keeling over, to just prop something underneath your left buttock or thigh. So you could lie a cup of tea on your lower back. And breathe. Go right into it. Right into the intensity of it. Softening in the shoulders and the forehead. Even in the top of your head and the back of your head. Breathe and soften. Where do you feel it? That is the question you ask yourself. Where is the center of the intensity? And can you breathe into that? You're going to come up to a full pigeon with arms straight. If you're on your back, stay on your back for this final minute. Really dropping the pelvis, maybe expanding in the chest and even taking the head back a bit if that all feels comfortable for you. It's a little bit of pressure, it's a little bit of a back bend when we come up like this, a little bit of compression in the lumbar spine. And breathe. Stay very, very close to sensation. You'll feel yourself drop. One more breath in and a long breath out. If you're on your back, could you come to sitting? If you're where I am, just rolling over onto your left buttock so you can sweep your right leg over the top now for your shoelace legs. And again, find the pose that's right for you. You might want to extend your left leg if you can't settle down through both sitting bones. You might like to take a blanket in between your knees. And taking a moment to drop the attention right down through the base of the body. And then we'll bring our arms into eagle arms if you'd like. 2 minutes, bringing the left arm over the right this time, either keeping the left arm straight and just using the right elbow to draw the arm across the body, or wrapping your arms around each other, maybe the backs of your hands, your palms meet. And then lift your shoulders up to your ears and slide them back down. Elbows lift, hands lift, and then you move them away from your face. This is for maximum access, if you like, to that area between your shoulder blades where we get so tight. And now breathe. I'll stop talking, shall I? Release the jaw. Behind the eyes. I'm saying all of these things because I feel myself tightening. Shoulders drop. Soften the roof of your mouth. Coming into the final 30 seconds here. Stay close. Stay with it. And then taking a full inhalation. And on the exhalation, simply releasing your arms, keeping your legs exactly where they are. Taking a moment to feel the body. And then we take that side stretch. So leaning over to the left, you either got your left hand pressing into the mat, or you have a prop to place your lower arm on, or maybe the floor. And then you float the right arm up and allow it to come over the ear. And keep dropping into that right hip. We have 2 minutes here. So you're really, really getting into the side body here, from the hip all the way up to the armpit, maybe all the way up round to the fingertips. Make sure your head is aligned with the spine. You could be looking anywhere, but I think for now, I think it's easiest to look down. Doesn't that feel great? Breathe and keep releasing. Feel the tiredness and the tensions of the week simply rinsing from you. Drop by beautiful drop. Can you feel that? Got 1 more minute. Thirty more seconds. Breathe, 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 breathe. And taking a full inhalation and a long exhalation, dropping your right hand, gently pushing yourself up. Taking a moment to simply feel the body now. And then we come for a few breaths into a downward dog, finding your way to a downward dog. And you can groan, you can moan. It should feel really like what you've longed for to come into this downward dog after all that compression and pressure in the lower body. So you can move around a little bit. You can bend your knees and straighten your legs, lift your hips, your heels. Move around. Take a few breaths to make it just like a lovely release. Or maybe you prefer to stay still. And then eventually we come down for 2 dragonfly variations. And here, have a bolster handy if you want to make it restorative. I'm going to just fold up a blanket to sit on, just to give myself a little bit of a lift. And these dragonfly variations, well, there's several things we can do. I want you to start by taking your legs as far apart as possible, and knowing that there'll be I know that some of you'll be there who just find it really difficult to sit with a straight spine and your legs open. So if that's the case, bend your knees up and even take cushions or blocks underneath your knees. I'm considering most of you come on a Friday night as veteran yogis and yoginis now. So I know that you're looking after your body. This will allow you to tilt the pelvis forwards and to protect the lower back. We're going to take half dragonfly for 3 minutes and then the other side. So we're going to come over to the right side. You could do it like this with both legs long, but it's quite interesting. You might want to experiment with this to bend the left knee behind you. Take the left foot out. It's like a little bit of a frog on the left. And for me, and it'll just depend on your anatomy, this gives me much richer feeling, the back of the right leg and down the inside, but it's by no means is it necessary. Finally, if you don't like any of those, you could come in to this version, half butterfly, with the left foot in towards the thigh. Different poses, all working on the same muscle groups. 3 minutes here. Oh, and the restorative version would simply have a bolster here for you to rest on. Still getting the hip opening, but you're supporting your upper body. So if that feels right, go for it. And breathe, breathe, breathe. And it can feel quite asymmetrical, this pose. It is by definition asymmetrical, but notice if there's a tendency to keel over, to feel particularly heavy in one shoulder. And see if you can, just by noticing it, begin to redress that balance. Breathe. And soften, very much a surrendering pose this, as you surrender yourself over the extended leg, over the right leg in this case. Watch yourself drop deeper and deeper. And by that I don't mean necessarily physically, it might be right into your inner heart, your inner landscape. Breathe. Got 30 more seconds here. Can you release and soften in the hips? Taking one full inhalation and a long exhalation. Very, very slowly, very, very slowly. Straightening yourself up and facing the front just for a moment before we take our half dragonfly to the other side. So whatever you did on the first side, you do the same on the second side. Maybe both legs are out straight. The right foot's into the left, or maybe you're taking the right leg out behind you. Maybe you have a bolster or a cushion under or over the knee. And really release down through the hips, take a breath in, and then surrender yourself forwards over that left leg. And breathe. And your body will tell you where you need to shine light on the tension so that you can allow it, you can set it free to be there and then go behind it. I'm saying that a lot in meditation at the moment. It's something I love that Richard Miller says. I rest teach. He says, set everything free to be there, rather than say, stop the thought, stop this, stop that. Set everything free to be here just as it is, and then see what happens. What permission then do you have to find that spaciousness in between the thoughts, behind the frenzy, that pool of stillness that so many of us crave? Breathe. Can you drop a little deeper, not only physically, but with your attention? Can you drop another layer? Breathe. Coming into your final 30 seconds. Stay very, very close. Very, very close. Taking one full breath in and a long breath out. And very gently bringing yourself up to face the front. And then we are going to take a symmetrical dragonfly with both legs extended. So preparing yourself, taking anything you need underneath your knees, anything you want to maybe rest your upper body on out in front of you. And we take 5 minutes. This is a longer hold now. It's the only 5-minute pose in the sequence. Maybe find your sitting bones. Find a little bit of space in the upper body. Breathe in, and then with the breath out, release forwards either a little bit. You could be right up here, and that's absolutely fine. Wherever works for you. And this is just so stilling, this pose. Allow yourself to drop right in, and this would be a great opportunity to return to that counted breath, but maybe now counting in for 5, pausing, counting out for 5. I know some people really like I know, Paul, you like to do this, I think, place a brick or something underneath the forehead. So I can't reach anything right now, but you could prop yourself up if you don't like to just hang. Breathe and observe absolutely everything here and now. The pulse of life in your body as you breathe it, or as it breathes you. Every cell alive and alert at the same time as softening and resting. Breathe. Maybe noticing how every out-breath fades away and takes you into that stillness. You may find that your attention can stay in that stillness even though the body continues to breathe in and out with its own natural rhythm. You don't need to let that rhythm of the breath interrupt your stillness. Where are you holding on? Very, very intimate, very, very close with every breath. You're coming into your final minute of this dragonfly. Maybe you drop a little deeper, or maybe you come out a notch, it's all good. Listening to what you need. Final 30 seconds. And then taking one full breath in and a long breath out. And coming out very slowly. It was a long hold, so a little bit of engagement of your abdominal muscles. You slowly reassemble your spine. And take a moment, maybe eyes closed with your spine straight, to simply feel the rebound. To feel the residue from that dragonfly. Beautiful. And our final pose before relaxation is a spinal twist. So if you'd like to ease your legs in, take a little bit of a windshield wiper just to rinse out the hips and the pelvis in case there's any accumulation there. Just gently rocking your knees from side to side. Before you're ready to come and lie on your back. And you can take the twist different levels of intensity. Remember that when you twist, the lower, and as you bring your knees over, the lower they are down towards the end of your mat, the lower down the spine you're targeting. And the higher up, so say they come right up towards the armpit, you're accessing higher up the spine. So you decide, we're going to take 3 minutes on each side. You decide what works for you. So we'll start coming to the left, bringing your knees over. If you want to make this a slightly intenser twist, you would wrap the left leg over the right, shuffle your pelvis to the right a little bit, and then allow the legs to drop. But it's much stronger. Don't feel you have to do that, because we're also looking to release the right shoulder blade and look to the right. I'm going to take the easy version. You could also, if you have a lot of tightness in your hips and your legs, you could place something in between the thighs, a pillow or a cushion or something, so that you allow yourself to settle. And there's nowhere else to go now. There's nothing else to do. Simply breathe and release. This is excellent for the spine, because we've taken the spine in flexion and extension and a lateral bend as well. So the spine has done everything that it's capable of, and now a little gentle twist is a perfect way to end off a sequence of this kind. Breathe. Super heavy in the hips, super heavy in the thigh bones. Really softening now into that right shoulder if you can. Really soft behind the eyes. You can let go of any counting of the breath. Allow the body to breathe itself. Let go. Let go. We're coming into the final 15 seconds of this side. Taking a lovely full breath in and a long breath out. Turning your head round to neutral first before you lift the right knee, followed by the left, and come into a neutral constructive rest before we take that twist the other way. So whatever level of intensity of the twist you took to the left, please repeat that to the right. If you're going to cross your legs, you take the left leg over the right before coming over. Otherwise, simply bringing your knees into your chest like I'm going to do, and dropping the knees over to one side. Choosing how close to your armpits or how low down you'd like your knees to be, where you want to target in the spine. And then settling into that left shoulder blade. And breathe here. Very gentle, very soft. Absolutely nothing to do. Where are you still holding on? Where might it be possible to soften and to just drop a little bit deeper? Dropping into the hips, side waist, and softening in the belly. Breathe. Coming into your final minute of this pose. Your final 30 seconds. And then gently bring your head back first, lifting your left knee, followed by the right, and lowering your 2 feet on the floor. And making sure that your spine is neutral. And taking a couple of breaths here to simply feel the body. And we're going to come into pentacle, which is simply where our legs are out, our arms are out. You might like to take your knees over a bolster. You might well want to cover yourself in a blanket. It's freezing, I think, at the moment. So making yourself comfortable. And closing your eyes. And I'd like to read a poem in a moment that anyone who was here in the morning has already heard today. So I apologise for that, but most of you weren't here. It's just a poem that I've seen around before, but it struck me as particularly beautiful recently. So as you settle, just allowing the mind to wander, to drift, coming to a natural breath, and observing all range of sensations as they bubble up, as they arise in the body. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out of the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. How he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. For these final couple of minutes here, staying very, very intimate, very close to all sensation. Setting free everything to be here. And beginning slowly to deepen your breath a little. Unless, of course, you want to just lie here longer, that's fine. Inviting a little bit of movement into the body. Maybe even to your fingers and toes. Having a little bit of a stretch, but not disturbing your stillness too much. Hopefully you haven't got too much to do this evening. Maybe having a little hug, rolling over to one side. Maybe joining me in a seated position, hands together in front of your heart space. And closing your eyes here for a moment to simply acknowledge your practice, noticing how you feel, noticing the atmosphere again in your room, and taking a full breath into your heart space. And as you breathe out, bowing your head, chin to your chest. And breathing in, lifting your head gently. And opening your eyes. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope that got into the whole body as it was designed to do. There's no class next week. There's no classes at all next week. The last class I teach this week is tomorrow morning. I'll be here at 9 o'clock for a bit of a romp, a little bit of a canter. I hope you have a lovely evening. If I don't see you, I hope you have a lovely weekend and week. And I'll be back on Monday, the 13th of July, for those of you who are not coming tomorrow. Good night. Thank you.